Hey DJ Tech Tools, it's Chris Brackley in the lab today looking at the Numark NV. This is a new Serato DJ controller, 4 channels, 4 decks, and it is a mid-price, mid-range controller. So we're talking about $700 street price in the US. Size-wise, it's equivalent to the Native Instruments Control S4, that kind of thing, the Pioneer SR, all that sort of stuff. This is very much middle of the road in terms of size, weight, and cost. But where it is not middle of the road is where some of the technology that Numark have brought to this thing. Mainly, we're talking about these 2 screens on either side. They're 4.3 inch size screens, and they are very, very interesting indeed. Now, I'm going to get to those in a bit. First of all, let's look at the actual controller itself as an overall unit, because that's just as important really as these fancy screens up there. So what have we got? Yeah, it's 4 channels. So you've got decks 1 and 2, 3 and 4. As per usual, you've got separate high pass, low pass filters on each channel with a nice resonance on them, and you've got the filter effects. These have come over from the NS7 too, so you've got the filter roll and the filter effects, which will let you activate an effect and the filter at the same time. So that's really nice. You've also got the touch effects, so these are touch sensitive knobs. They're all this around the controller here, so touch effects will do the effects on and off just by touching the actual knob itself. There's a momentary kind of thing, which is very, very nice. We've also got the touch all, will let you do kind of basically cut your frequencies again just by touching, so you can cut the treble, cut the bass, cut the mid-range just by touching those controls. Again, it's a nice touch. I liked it on the NS7 too, and I like it here as well. Jog wheel wise, you've got fairly small kind of free spinning jog wheels, a bit like the NS6 from Numark that came before, but a bit smaller. And normally I get kind of annoyed at having jog wheels that don't have a position indicator. So like the DDJ-SX, the Vestax 380 and so on have got LEDs to display exactly where your cue point is on the jog wheel itself. These don't have that, but what they do have is the screen. So you've got on the screen, you've got your actual layout there. You can see your virtual deck, and you can see where your hand is moving in relation to your cue point, and so that's kind of resolved on these. I'm not too fussed about having that at all. It just works very nicely. The screen is very close to the platter, easy to use, no problems whatsoever. You've got the performance pads, which are basically MPC, you know, Akai MPC kind of pads from the same family. They're quite low profile, but they are big enough to kind of hammer on. And they've got a nice feel, and they are velocity sensitive. So if you're in the SP6 sampler mode, you can do velocity mode in that and have velocity sensitive drumming for your samples. You've got Q loops, you've got auto loop, auto roll, you've got manual loops, you've got the slicer, 2 modes for that, and we've got Serato flip on here as well. This is the first controller to ship with Serato flip on there. Comes with a license for it in the software, and it's very, very easy to use. Basically, you can record using the parameter buttons over there and adjust your sort of parameters and so on. And then we can also hold down shift, hit Q, and we've got some saved flips over there, so I can just activate a saved flip like this. Once you know how the controls work, it's very intuitive, very easy to use. And I can change to a different flip. Can save them on the fly and so on. It's great. We'll get more into flip perhaps in a separate video another time, because there's other stuff to talk about with this controller for sure. You've got typical sort of controls for your headphone. You've got Q, mix and so on. You've got 2 different headphone sockets for small and large jacks. You've got the mains power supply. Obviously it does require a power supply to get all these screens running and so on. There's a lot of stuff in there, and that does allow as well that you've got an aux and a mic input. You can switch between the 2. And so you can run like a backup, you know, iPod, phone or whatever into the back of the unit over here. And that is completely, basically bypasses everything. So it doesn't show up on the VU meters here in the middle. It just goes straight through to the master and the booth. So that means you can have your backup thing running anytime. And if you actually disconnect the hardware from the software, then that auxiliary input will still continue to play. So that's very useful. It is very useful because this is not a standalone mixer. There are no sort of separate inputs for turntables or for line level sources or anything apart from that auxiliary. This is not a standalone thing like that. It's got XLR outputs for your main output, and you've got a booth output as well, and you've got, you know, master out is on phonos, you've got booth output on phonos. So it's covered in terms of your actual outputs and so on. But if you're looking for something to act as a standalone mixer as well as just a controller, then this is not going to be for you. You know, this is very much about interacting with the Serato DJ software, and that's really it. Okay, so just understand that basically. Let's turn that flip off, get back into the tune, and I think it's time we should talk about the screens. So let's talk about the really interesting part of this controller then, and that is of course this pair of 4.3 inch screens that we've got here on either side. Now, first of all, they're not touch screens or anything like that, and they are not massively high resolution. Don't go expecting any retina business here. They are low res, but they're certainly high enough resolution that you can see what's going on. The viewing angle is very good. The brightness is pretty adaptable in terms of how well it works in a dark environment and a light environment. I would have liked a way to sort of tweak the contrast and brightness on the fly. There are no controls for that on the NV, but ultimately, as I say, I've used it in a few different environments now and it's been fine every time. Viewing angles are good. I'm sat currently right behind this controller and, you know, at quite a weird angle, and I've still got decent clarity. I can still see what's going on that screen without any problems at all. So that's really good. This is your default view. You can switch the views with this button down here, and this is the sort of default one with your virtual deck, your platter there, so you can get your cue point and you can see where you're scratching in and so on. You've also got the BPM to 1 decimal place, remain time and so on, track title artist, original BPM key if you've analysed for that, and you've got your loop display as well, so your auto loops and loop rolls will highlight according to what you're pushing there. Pitch display as well, so which pitch percentage you're on, and the pitch range, which can be changed up here as well. You've got your effects display there down the bottom, so you can see at a glance what's going on with your effects and what's active and which parameters you are tweaking with these knobs here. So that's a nice touch. You know, it's right there in front of you, and that really is the point of this NV. It's all there in front of you. You don't have to look off to the screen. Numark have kind of given the idea that you can actually close your laptop screen altogether, whether that be with Windows built-in sort of power management or with apps like No Sleep on the Mac. And I have tried that. I do think there's a few limitations still with having your laptop screen right away from you or closed altogether. For example, if we go into the next view there, we've got the larger waveform display, which is really cool. Perfect, really. So you could even, instead of using the virtual deck to queue up, you can actually queue up using the waveform if that's more your taste. That's great. Still got all your track information and so on there as well, and the track overview waveform, and your cue points will always show up on these overview waveforms as well. But for example, you can adjust and set the beat grid using these two buttons here, but on this screen you can't see the beat grid. So I think that would be good if they could add that onto there for a start. Browsing is very cool. You've got this is the one thing that's sort of missing from Serato's iPad app, the Serato remote, and you can't browse your tracks and so on. There's a lot more communication going on between this NV and the computer itself. So in this case, we can touch the browse knob, just go through and actually select what tracks we want to play. And then we load them using the top one there. And off we go. I mean, that's pretty impressive stuff, really. And it does take it a big step towards, yeah, eliminating that laptop and that Serato face that we all know so much about, we all heard so much about, and just getting it out of your life. It feels a little bit odd to me that you don't load a track by pushing the knob in. Instead, that will take you through back and forth with your crates. You've always got to load with this button at the top. And I would have quite liked to see that push that and that would load the track. It just feels more natural to me. I don't know if that's from using Native Instruments stuff or the Pioneer controllers. It just feels like, yeah, I want to push that button in and load my track. But you know, it's not something I can't work around, and it's just something, a case of getting used to it, really. But as you can see, the responsiveness is very fast. Everything happens really quickly. The refresh rate is perfectly good for what we're talking about. And overall, it's a really fun experience to have that much information right there at your fingertips, right in front of you. And you really can put that laptop quite a way away, even if I don't think it is ready to actually have you shut the lid. I mean, for example, another reason you couldn't really shut that lid is there's no way to search on this controller. If you want to search for a track, if I want to look for a Madonna record or something, I can't do that from the controller at all. I can only scroll through my lists. I can't change the layout and the order of my lists either as well. So if you're the kind of person who's got very prepared playlists and that kind of thing, you work in that kind of way, then actually you could shut that lid quite happily and you could just crack on without any problem at all. But if you are more of sort of an open format person, someone who's a bit more reactive to what's going on, then you will need that laptop open a little bit at this time. So to wrap up then, the Numark NV. Now I'm always pleased when DJ equipment companies push the boat out, try something different and try something new. And it doesn't always pan out, you know, but in the case of the NV, I really do think it has worked very well for Numark. This thing is a fully baked, you know, mature controller in every respect. All of these things that we see on there, from the touch sensitive stuff, the pads and everything else, is all built on Numark's heritage over the past few years of building decent controllers, and you've got the added bonus of these screens on there. I don't think the screen functionality is 100% fully baked yet. You know, they do kind of suggest you can shut that laptop lid and play on, and you kind of can. It does work, but I think there's a few features they kind of need to add on, maybe in the software or the firmware as time goes on, or perhaps in future models, that would really make shutting that laptop lid a reality and just get that completely out of the way. But as it stands, if you treat them as a supplement, as an add-on to your existing, you know, laptop setup, then you know, there's a lot to offer on those screens. It's really something we've never seen before, and I really appreciate innovation and interesting ideas, and Numark have definitely thrown a lot of those at the NV. So please do check out the written review over at djtechtools.com, where you'll find a bit more on the tech specs and so on, and thank you for watching.